Hey there, my Star Wars Destiny friends. Happy Destiny Friday, and thanks for checking in. So today we have special guest Casero has joined us for a post round two kind of mid-season update of the World Cup currently going on for ARH Destiny. He's going to run us through not only the current status, what the event is, but also some sweet deck lists. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Star Wars Destiny folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and the Commando cast. So today we are joined by Casero himself. How's it going, my friend?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
We are going to be talking, or he is going to be enlightening us on the Star Wars Destiny meta as it has evolved now, because of the World Cup that has been going on. So, Casey, I'll throw it over to you. What's going on? What's new in the world of ARH? And
Cool.
Yeah, run this down.
So I should probably give a bit of just a context on what we mean by the Destiny World Cup. And a renewed hope, we most recently launched our 8th set, Awaiting Fate, now about 6 weeks ago. So folks have been having a chance to explore the set. But one way to really kind of celebrate and bring the community together is we organized a tournament kind of inspired by the World Cup or the European Cup, which kicks off, in fact, probably the day that the cast launches. We're recording this on a Thursday. It'll be up, kind of first match starts tomorrow, in sort of a classic kind of team format. There's a group stage that then sort of narrows down to kind of a top cut with semifinalists. And we've got some teams from around the world. Folks raised their hands back earlier in the year. And so we've got, a couple teams from the UK. We've got a couple teams from Canada. We've got a few in the US. We've got Poland. We've got Brazil. We've got sort of a world team, which was a chance to kind of pull some folks together that ended up being multiple countries across Europe. And these are every round of the cup is a 3 team members competing against their corresponding opponents in best of 3 matches. So we can start to see how that plays out. So we finished nearly the first 2 rounds of the cup.
Awesome. All right, so what has been your overall take? We'll go into some specific decks and stuff, and we have all that available. And also, I do want to let the viewers know, because we are shooting this relatively late on a Thursday and we go live Friday morning, I'm going to be trying to do this I'm going to try and minimize the editing and do it live. So bear with me as I go through this and we pop back and forth. So is there anything you want me to start by pulling up?
Well, let me say this first, Andrew, just given the context you just shared. One of the coolest things for me as just a Destiny fan, obviously I'm a fan of the game, I love this community, it's felt like live sports. There are, particularly in a weekend, which is because you're dealing with a bunch of time zones, is when a lot of folks are scheduling their matches. We're trying to do roughly 1 round every week, and we've largely been able to kind of stick to that with 15 best of 3s every week that need to get sorted out. You'll kind of arrive in a weekend and you'll be like, oh man, like I can catch Brazil versus the kind of East Coast US. And then in about an hour, these guys are going to be streaming this other match over here. And so part of the reason we're shooting this now is I knew we could catch a couple of matches and sort of fold those into the results that we're going to share now. So I'm going to be posting an article up on the ARH website with kind of links to some of the folks that are streaming. So for folks who hear this and you want to watch some Destiny on TTS, you can sort of see some of the format. Maybe what we do first, Andrew, is why don't we pull up, we've got a couple of leaderboards that show sort of how the teams are shaping up after the first couple of rounds. And then I can talk a bit about what characters are being played and some themes that are starting to emerge.
Sure.
All right. So you see here in Group A, this is a 5-team group. Our kind of teammates from Scotland had a couple of conflicts come up at the end and ultimately decided to drop rather than try and reconfigure a sort of a made-up team of folks from all over the place. And so therefore, everyone's got a bye in one of the rounds. This is a space where the results will probably take another round or 2 to really emerge. But we're starting to see this play out. The kind of folks from England, this is your kind of classic Echo-based crew with Lando Wonka, Echo 3, Eric, and Kola Koala, who you'll sometimes see on the database, have sort of come through. They lost kind of a tight one in the first round to Poland, and then beat the sort of USA East team with what was a really exciting kind of 2-1 win that came down literally to the final match, and a 3-0 win, but came down to the final match with sort of a last reroll to get an unblockable to win, which was pretty exciting. And then the rest of it's kind of shaken out. You see we've got one match outstanding here for Poland in the mid-rim. That's the kind of that Wookiee smells and crew. Rando Mando, Stubby, Darth Clooney are that mid-rim group from kind of Wisconsin, Illinois. They've won their first match against Poland, but we're waiting to kind of see the sort of final result when Rando Mando and Knight get their match in. So that's where that one's starting to shake out. If we go over to Group B, you can start to see a bit more of how the kind of field's taking shape. So here, God bless Liquid Snake and Team Toronto. They're the only group so far that's 3-0'd each of their first 2 rounds. So they're kind of obviously in with sort of the top of the table 2-0, and they've got all 12 individual wins as you kind of think about what that means to 3-0. And then we've got sort of an exciting match. The one that's still outstanding is Mordatz against Norman. That will be the deciding factor of whether the Midlands crew from England ends up going 2-0 in the first 2 rounds, or whether the Miserado, this is St. Louis folks like Norman, Nute, Ray, Quinlan Voss, and Strongbrad from Colorado. So we had to kind of give them their own name there. This is one that really is starting to feel like there's kind of a top 3, and then the other folks trying to scratch into that, fighting out for just 2 spots after the first 2 rounds.
Awesome. All right, so with the teams laid out, and you said you can very clearly see the second bracket, or team Group B, not the second bracket, but Group B is forming up, but it still looks like it's pretty wide open in Group A.
Yeah, the kind of bye just throws a wrench in this one, right? The sort of mid-rim guys technically have a win as soon as Rando Mando finishes their match, because Clooney and Stubby both won against Poland. But it's probably gonna take a round or 2 for the rest of that to really start to settle out, because folks have just played different numbers of games.
Makes sense. All right, well, let's go ahead and pull up the breakdown here, and you can run us through this one. Look at that evenly distributed pie chart, by the way.
Very evenly distributed. Good job, community. I think the first headline here that I've been pretty inspired by is, 28 matches now, so 56 players. We've seen 60 distinct characters played across those kind of matches. So a lot of characters are being played. In the sort of article that we sort of post on the website tomorrow, we'll have a link to the kind of live data that folks can see the pairings and sort of, all the one-ofs that folks have played. But there are some kind of themes starting to emerge. So clearly this skews a little bit blue, and more blue villain than anything else. It turns out Atara Mastery is still very, very good. And folks kind of find all kinds of ways to kind of slot that in. I was poking around that data a little bit tonight, and interestingly, blue villain is 5 big bad Balin, and then one-ofs of everything else is really what's kind of filling out that blue villain piece. The other one, and the community is small enough, there aren't big moments where lots of games are happening, and we have access to those, and haven't had that for a little while now. One of the things I realized is that the mechanic that ARH introduced with Display of Power, where you end up with 2 color characters, makes a pie chart like this a little bit tricky. So in fact, when I looked at the colors that have played, the true blue slice of the pie is actually probably a bit bigger. You'll see in a moment there's a lot of Sabine in multiple pairings and doing very, very well. She's yellow, gains blue. Marin is yellow, gains blue. Maul is yellow, gains blue. Palpatine's red, gains blue. So there's probably even more blue than this is sort of reflecting right now. But otherwise, a really even distribution, and kind of fun to see how folks are kind of mixing and matching some different pairings.
Makes sense. So if Sabine would fall in she'd fall in yellow hero. So you're going with their natural color.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, so you had mentioned spreadsheets. Is there anything you want to cover in this sheet in terms of the breakdowns? We've got, looks like a full breakdown in here of what folks were playing in round 1, and so they can switch decks between rounds, clearly.
Exactly, yeah. So the format is, in your best of 3, you need to pick a deck and stick with that for the full best of 3, but you can then change from one round to the next. So in the sort of group B where you've got a full 6-team complement, that'll be a 5-round round robin. And so you could play as many as 5 decks, and obviously semifinalists and finalists can add a couple more in, or you can stay on the same thing. And we've seen kind of a mix of both. One of the decks we're going to look at is a Sabine Asajj deck that's the most played pairing right now across a handful of different players. And Old Ben Kenobi from the Toronto crew, D'Arteo from USA East have played that in both of their first round matches, which is partly what's kind of pumping some of those Sabine numbers up. And other folks have played different things each time.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let's go ahead. You mentioned Eric's deck, right? So we can pop over to that. So this is Ayla Sabine.
Yeah, so this is one you see. It's kind of labeled in the database as Echo Base Champion 4.0 from a couple weeks back. And Eric kind of brought it out to a weekly Echo Base on a Thursday night, had fun with it, and brought it to his first round. And it clearly went well. You can sort of see his notes even on the side. It's like, boy, this is now 8-0 at the kind of time that he published this. So he brought it to his first match, 2-0 there, 2-0 again against the USA East in the second round. And spoiler alert, he's actually finished up his round 3 and switched decks. So we'll kind of talk about that as we kind of mentioned a couple other themes that are popping up. Awesome. But this is a classic. This is everybody's blue and nobody's blue. If you think about what Display of Power Ayla and the new Sabine do, that means the most kind of unfair kind of deck building kind of principle here is your Rebel Alliance is basically a heal 3 for 0 because you can sort of heal a blue, heal a red, heal a yellow in terms of the sort of way that plays out, which is always fun when that you can kind of get that guy to fire. The other thing that I'll say, and you'll see this in a couple of other Sabine decks, I think folks have really realized the value of this Sabine, who, when you activate or after activation, you get to re-roll a die, yours or your opponent's, and if it's damage, you get to kind of ping an unblockable in, which by itself is valuable. And we've seen folks be winning some games with that re-roll. And then if you kind of mouse over the Nute Villager, you can see part of what's giving Sabine just a lot of consistency in this kind of format. If you pick Sabine's die, whether you roll what you want or not, you can just fix it with the Nute Villager. And so you're practically guaranteeing yourself in a Sabine context to get what you want. Ayla has a 3 reroll side. Again, you've got a chance to reroll a bunch of dice, hope to get what you want, yours or your opponent's, and the Nute can fix something. You can take one of your opponent's character dice and blank it. You can put one of yours on damage. You can put it on money if you need money. So that set of combinations is part of what's helping here. And then the reality is, this new Awaiting Fate Sabine is very much benefiting from some of the support that Seeking Answers Sabine got a few sets ago. She got this amazing West Star that you can pay an extra and make it elite if it's on Sabine. And that older Sabine cost a lot of points when you're building your team. And so it was hard to kind of find a partner who could really sort of hold up on their own. But at 13 points, boy, this Sabine loves getting that blaster or the new lightsaber, both of which give you some extra benefits you put on Sabine.
Right.
So that's, I think, part of what's driving the sort of Sabine presence so far in the early stage.
And that West Stars right here, right, has free to play. So that's pretty strong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And so does the new Sabine lightsaber. So in both cases, you can sort of start out with Sabine, get any benefit from that as you go, and then redeploy it if you need to.
What are they using to make the first dollar? Do they just have to roll it?
Well, I think a lot of times you really like rolling your clone in with Ayla Secura's power action. You get to re-roll it once as kind of part of her ability, and if you can get the Noti out, that can fix it and at least pay itself back.
That's gross.
You've got 2 chances to get your third money. You'll see that the Asajj version of that Sabine deck starts with an extra buck because you've got profitable connections. So that's the other way to go about it.
That's actually kind of gross that it's just a natural flip with Ayla.
Yep. Yeah, so lots you can do there for sure.
Oh, wow.
And look, Ayla's been really good since she came out. She's had a lot of different partners, and this is one where they're both really sort of foregoing the access to blue, but man, you get to play a lot of good stuff in this pairing.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, let's go over to Team Canada's Sabine Asajj, which you mentioned as well.
Yep. So there's a couple different tweaks that folks have sort of made to this, but I think this is a good one that Ben and Liquid Snake and others have kind of been working on. On the, it's very upgrading, and you've got some things that help you find your black market connection. Lots of weapons, but sure, why not put an Ataru in? Because both of your characters are blue here. So there's kind of real value once you figure out who they're going to target. You can sort of put Ataru on the other one, or you can put it on someone, they shift the target there, and eventually you can overwrite it with a redeploy weapon, of which you can see there's a bunch in there. Same shenanigans with Sabine's Westar, Sabine's lightsaber, and you start with the 3 money, right? Mm-hmm. So you got good options there right away. The MK sniper rifle is a great way to generate shields. Again, you're sort of playing into the fact that Sabine has a after activation reroll. Asajj's power action is reroll a couple of dice. So you can start to see, again, the Noti Villager is going to fix some things. That MK sniper rifle gets you a shield. Asajj wants to do some unblockable damage with her power action. Sabine wants to do unblockable damage with her ability. So lots to like there. Worth noting, if somehow you strike out and you don't find any of those 3-cost weapons in your kind of opening hand, guess what? You might have found a Jedi Temple Guard, which is certainly no bad thing to start off the game with.
Right.
So again, lots of really good targets here to get yourself going. And at a time when we've been sort of living through a very shieldy period in the game, particularly for Blue Hero, having multiple ways to get unblockable damage in with both Asajj and Sabine is really helpful.
Yeah, nice. And then you said ways to get black market out. How are they cheating that out?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, you've got a lavish cape that can help you do that. There's a card that's not in this version of the deck that some folks have been running called Digging for Answers, which essentially lets you look at the top 3 and either sift them all on the bottom or keep them on top and order them how you want to. Draw the top one if you want it is another way to start pulling things out. I can't remember if you close the window, Andrew. I can't remember if so this one's got Undercity, which again is the battlefield that lets you power action and filter. So multiple ways to be seeing more than your standard 5 cards in a round as you get through.
Okay.
And a couple different ways, obviously, to ramp with Luke's offer for your weapons, with the starting money just to get going is a good way to go.
Right. All right. Well, then let's go over to the third one. So Eric again.
Yeah, this is, thank you, Eric, for being such a good citizen and posting your decks. This was the one that I could easily snag without having to recreate it myself. I pulled this one up because one of the themes that is kind of surfacing right now, beyond the fact that it does feel like Sabine season in a way that's exciting, as folks are kind of seeing what that kind of iconic character can do, is boy, oh boy, did troopers become very popular all of a sudden. And there's multiple red-yellow trooper pairings that are winning. So one is Hunter, Bo, and Mission That Never Ends. We can chat in a minute about sort of what this does. Norman piloted this in his round 1 win. Liquid Snake did it in his round 2. You see Eric just did this, I think, either yesterday or today in his round 3. So this is kind of one version that's showing. There's another incredibly scary, do a bazillion damage very quickly, Wrecker and Paz Vizsla. We may sort of find a way to sort of share some links around that in a future article or a cast. You'll recall those guys both do big indirect damage. And who do you target? You can try and burn down Paz Vizsla, but you better make sure you really hit him because he doesn't die from damage right away. So he can hang around and resolve his dice and stick around for a minute. Wrecker can resolve other die sides as indirect and also gets this kind of boost when you're playing, kind of upgrades or supports. So that one we've watched just kind of be a truck that runs over some other decks. And then one that I had actually brought to a league top cut one version of last month, and then Gameslayer brought it to his round 2 match, is Pre Vizsla and the main man that you featured recently, Andrew, Enoch, with the mission that never ends. And man, I tell you, like, as that thing gets going, you realize almost no dice ever leave the table. One of their characters goes down, Enoch takes a die. One of your character goes down, you get mission that never ends, and then you put it on a night trooper. And you just get so much just consistency of lots of direct damage from those characters. A couple of supports that work well with them, like the Tread Speeder Bike or Night Troopers. And then the types of trooper support that we have. Access to Red right now gives you fundamentally the only true multi-die removal that we've got in the game right now, unless you go with leaders in command. So you've got a Power of the Tribe, you've got military prowess, both of which can really help you. You see that in Eric's build here. And there's a lot of ways to build this. In Eric's one, you're not doing the Medal of Bravery thing that boosts your trooper dice, but you've got a lot of good weapons to kind of pump things through. Other folks are going a little more supporty and a little less this. So it's pretty cool to see. The one line I will say about this kind of Hunter and Bo version, if you think about what both of their power actions can do, Bo has a way to boost damage. Hunter essentially has a finishing blow. So Hunters remove this die to defeat a character with 2 or less remaining health. We can pull up Bo again, remove a shield from a non-plot card so that you can boost one of your die showing damage. So you've got a couple of power action ways to boost damage or finish off a character. And then you can do things that action cheat for you, like a Swift. So activate somebody in, use that power action as one way to kind of move. Or Hunter's Knife, which is a pretty cool new card. When you resolve that showing damage, it does the unblockable. And then you can use an action on your card. One of those power actions is a great way to do that. So you kind of do that and then boost a bow die, or do that, get the unblockable to put somebody close enough to the finish, and then have Hunter, his power action, finish him off. So there's some pretty cool combos that particularly this pairing can sort of pull off that I think folks are exploring right now, or on the other side of the table learning the hard way.
Fair enough.
So
actually, that's pretty dirty.
Headline.
That's pretty dirty. No, and you had shared your Pre Vizsla, not Pax Vizsla, your Pre Vizsla deck build with me as well, and I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Of course, we can't forget about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is a great plot that is often free. So cool card.
It is bonkers in multiple of these pairings right now. I actually don't know if Quinlan Voss's Paz and Wrecker, how he's sort of thought about Mission That Never Ends. I think he's got Warfare in there right now as another way to sort of push some damage through for the same kind of net one team building point. I think maybe he stayed away because Wrecker's got a couple of blanks and it feels real bad to, Mission That Never Ends into some blanks. But man, you've also got a chance of hitting 4 indirect with Pause or something. So
right.
Definitely some kind of pros and cons there.
And then they're on Hangar Bay. So after you activate a character, give control. Oh, that's right.
Yep. Yeah, this one's just kind of chipping in more damage. I've seen, again, multiple versions of the way to kind of play this one.
Very interesting. All right. Well, what else is going on within the Destiny world?
I think we're sort of pretty focused on World Cup right now. It's been really fun to sort of see just discourse, dialogue. What's it going to mean to kind of counter red, yellow troopers? What's the right way to attack this? There's been a bit of milk kind of popping up, and folks are kind of reconsidering how that fits in. So that's doing exactly what we hoped it would in terms of the Cup. That said, we've got sort of a tradition of a Grand Championships, and those will be coming up this summer. Oh, there you go. So the U.S. Grand Championships again will be at Gen Con, and so we're starting to fill up events. That's both the sort of ARH standard event, but also some other formats that folks obviously really enjoy. We'll continue to have FFG Standard. That's been one that's sort of brought back players from the past in other years. We expect it will again this time. We again will feature Smash. Thank you very much, Dice Commando, which was a blast last year, and we'll see if anybody can knock our good buddy Mitch off the sort of Smash King throne. And then this year, man, I am so pumped. We will be drafting with Dicey Companions.
Mm-hmm.
My family and I got a couple of our printed draft kits at the same time that we got some kind of printed Awaiting Fate cards, and we drafted with a couple of buddies this past weekend and had so much fun. So I'm excited to see the community kind of get that experience, because it's really not the same on TTS when you're trying to digitally pass cards around the table. But we're really excited to do that, and to do it with Dean in the house, because Swag Dean, our good buddy, will be at Gen Con this year.
Nice.
So that's something to look forward to in August. The UK Grand Championships, which we'll get a post up for soon, will be about a week later. So that's not on this post now. We'll do sort of a proper Grand Championships post in the next week, I think, with a bit of previews of some pretty gorgeous prizing that we're doing for that. But that'll also be in August. And then, of course, we're always willing to help any region around the world. If you got the player base that wants to come together in person, we'll help you make it Grand Champs. So probably Canada and Brazil, we're looking at you.
Awesome. Yes, the Brazilian friends always here for us. So
yeah, I will say, speaking of our friends at SWDBR, Thiagum has streamed probably 2/3 of the matches so far. So if anyone wants to watch Destiny and practice your Portuguese, he is your guy. Someone I always love the chances to play against. We always kind of learn with and from each other as we're playing. He's a really creative deck builder and great player, but he's been an awesome supporter of this. And our friends in Brazil have actually been helping with World Cup prizing as well. So we'll be revealing a couple of their pieces that'll help out for World Cup prizing.
Awesome. Well, this was a really cool meta rundown. It's always fun to see it on the competitive side, right? I mean, it's evolved quite a bit also from what we saw at the release party, where it was kind of, the support spam of sorts. That's probably not the right term, because it was huge supports, right? Kind of hitting the table fast. And now we're in what many players would consider to be an aggro meta, where at least it appears, where you see a lot of characters with upgrades.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The deck that you're describing that Rando Mando played was cheat out with Leia, massive annihilator droids, and just go to town. And as long as you hit those, which he was able to do pretty consistently, you win. Oh, most of the rest of that sort of top field, there was still a lot of Marin at that point, and there was a lot of hand wringing kind of coming out of that weekend about what do you do with Marin, and we kind of tuned her down a little bit with an errata, and it's really interesting. Across 2 rounds, Marin's been played once. Carson Teva, who I think is still a really, really strong character with lots of viable partners, hasn't been played once in the Cup. So I think there's a couple things happening. One, folks are still exploring, which is exactly what we want. There's a bazillion combinations out there. Display of Power Vader hasn't been played at all yet in the World Cup, which I'm sort of waiting to sort of see him arrive and do some big things. And then I think there's probably a true meta that's starting to play out, where folks are seeing things that look good and they want to try that, or they want to jump ahead to what might get ahead of that. So we'll see whether rounds 3 and 4 start to get a response to aggro, because you're right, between this pretty consistent Sabine and a blue deck, Sabine and Ayla, or the kind of troopers of different varieties. There's a lot of punch you fast and keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's an interesting check valve, right? Usually you have kind of the wheel, right, where aggro does really well into mill does really well into support, and support can outlast aggro, maybe. But you have this interesting thing with Enoch, where he actually preys on, because traditionally your support wide, they run more characters at smaller health. So now he can go prey on those. So it's an interesting check valve, where you almost have, instead of it being a wheel, you kind of have one of them that can go back the other way. So it's very
Yeah,
interesting.
I think that's right. And my hunch is the the answer may not be about supports, although eventually it may get there. I think some type of high health pool. Enoch getting a teeny tiny support characters die. All right, it's not good for you, I guess, if Enoch steals your characters die when they go down, but it doesn't scare you that much. So it could be that. There's ways I think that folks could start leaning into shields in a big way. The new Dinjarin Mando is designed with sort of shields in mind. I think there's a Din Yaddle pairing that folks have kind of
Mhm.
messed around with. And potentially, that's sort of one way to go about this. Um, but some of this is also just going to be saying, hey, can I be the beatdown? Can I out aggro the person across the table? So I'm really curious to see which way folks go. Do you try and buff up and defend against it, or do you just see if we can keep finding ways to fine tune and hit harder? We'll see.
Well, so we had an interesting meta, and this was many, many moons ago, but it was set 4, Legacies came out. And
Yeah.
one of the big decks that came out of that was what we called 5-die villain at the time, which was a 3-wide. I
Yeah.
mean, a 5-die start is still pretty good even these days, right? And it ran just a bunch of redeploy value guns. And so it was like it had the benefits of being multicolor, like many of the support decks had. It had a high health pool, like many of the support decks did. And it was just able to act as an aggro deck, though. So maybe that's where, I mean, it's still aggro itself, I suppose, but maybe that's where the meta ends up going if the math is there
Yeah,
to make the characters work.
I think that's a great line that folks may choose to take. I know you're a big redeploy fan, so
Mm-hmm.
am I, and I think folks are going to be extra cautious about saying I'm going to turn this character into the kind of Voltron with all kinds of things that make them great when they roll in, but they don't stick around if they don't. Um, that's risky right now. So I think that redeploy across perhaps a 3-wide is sensible. I think designing with multi-die removal or string together ambush removal is another thing that I'm trying to keep in mind right now when I'm playing. If I'm not in red, where you've got a couple of options. Blue Hero's got Sanctuary, which essentially feels like a multi-die removal, where you can take out a 3 and get 3 shields. That always feels really
Mm-hmm.
good. Um, but yeah, I do think having some answers for what am I going to do when just these 2 characters rolling in with maybe 1 upgrade could be 12. How do I want to handle that? And it could be 12 direct, or it could be, God, with Wrecker and Pause, it could be some stupid number, right? 16 indirect. So at least kind of thinking through what's my strategy for that, I think will be an important thing for folks to keep in mind.
And then, how is your take on the? It's not lax, not the right word, but AOE damage is not as prevalent currently as it has been in past metas.
Yeah,
Why do you think that's not translating to wider decks?
it's a good question. I think folks are exploring, and at a stage when you want to check out the cool big new
Mm-hmm.
characters. There's probably just a psychology and enthusiasm kind of buffer there that might be getting in the way. Um, I'm trying to think through who some of the sort of tools are. One of the things that you'll see in this post is this new neutral Senate Guard, which is 6 points for red, which feels really good to splash red for very, very cheap, or 7, and they get the old stun baton from FFG days. That's showing up in a bunch of places. He's also kind of Enoch proof, right? Because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a die to steal. So that, after Sabine, is the second most played card so
Hmm.
far. So that's going into a lot of 3-wides, obviously. Um, but it's a really good question. What might be holding folks back? To be honest, I don't know that folks expected these sort of early weeks to feel quite as aggressive as they are. And so there might be something around as the dust has settled a little bit and folks get a feel for what's been out there, people step back and say, okay, yep, Akbar is not going to be the answer, right? Akbar came to the table a couple days from folks who've been away from Destiny for some months and just got clobbered because there's no way to kind of keep up with the sort of heat that's getting thrown at you. But yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, because we're not even seeing much play of, Whistling Birds is still legal at least for one more set, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be the next to go, but it's still out there. And that's one of the few sources of AoE, I think. I mean, aside from like action from hand that do, multicolor hits and stuff like that. But.
Right. Yeah. You're exactly. You're the new Z6 rotary blaster is a good tool. I think you called that out on one of the casts, maybe when you're talking about troopers, but it's almost kind of designed with an Enoch in mind. He's got an ability where you get to roll. His special lets you roll in a die from a red upgrade or a support, so that can come in a couple times. When you play it on a trooper, it gets to roll in once. So you potentially can hit that a few times. It's got 2 special sides, and the special is do 2 to 2 different characters. So that starts to get there. Interestingly, the new Ahsoka also has an ability that can hit multiple characters at once. I think she showed up just once so far. And my sense is folks might be sleeping on her a little bit as they've been exploring pairings with other big blues. I think she's really interesting and potentially is another way to kind of go about that. But you're right. There's not lots of AoE or hit multiple characters at once as a way to kind of hold down those kind of 3 wides.
All right. Well, last question I'll throw at you. So you brought up Marin, who did, she took her nerf deservedly, right? But still seems pretty good to me. And I think we see this phenomenon a lot in the Destiny community, where when someone gets hit, all of a sudden they're not played anymore. Like the one like Benthic comes to mind, right? When Benthic went from 15 to 16, this was set 2 or ARH 2. He went from 15 to 16, and folks kind of stopped playing him for a bit just because the old decks weren't good, but he's still really good, right? And I think Marin maybe is in that syndrome now. She seems pretty good still.
I could not agree more. It was the first deck in the week that Awaiting Fate released, and we were on the road with family, and I hadn't had a chance to really build anything, and I showed up to our now regular Tuesday night with sort of America's friendly hours. We played 9 p.m. East Coast. Not so great for West Coast folks. Sorry, West Coast folks. Although few of those folks were kind of showing up even when we tried to do the very late one. And I showed up and we kind of said, hey, you got 4 rounds and you can swap decks between. I had whipped it together that afternoon with Marin and Talzin and had so much fun the first round that I kept going. I went 4-0 that night with just that deck. And fair enough, that was the Marin that might get 3 shields in a turn. And so we had to tune that down so it maxed out at 1. It's still really good. And my quick hypothesis of why she hasn't shown up much in the first 2 rounds of the World Cup is, there's 40-something folks playing. There've only been 56 kind of pairings to do so far, and folks want to keep exploring. And there was a lot of Marin exploring, and if you haven't been paying super close attention, you're like, oh, she got nerfed, she must not be good now, and you sort of move on. So I expect folks will come back to her and give her a second look with a number of different partners because she's still really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. Well, before we get out of here, anything you want to shout outs you want to give, parting shots? Turn it over to you.
Honestly, I'm really appreciative of the way folks have kind of leaned into this kind of World Cup moment. We sort of came out of the gate early in the year when we kind of laid out the roadmap for 2024, knowing this would be something that we thought would be compelling for folks. And then when we had to sort of retime the fate, I was worried that we'd lose some of the momentum, and folks that initially had said they'd be interested, would sort of lose interest and not sort of plug back in. So it's been great to see folks playing. I will give a shout out to our good buddy Rebel Trader, who is one of the folks that sort of replugged into Destiny after a break. He's obviously doing a bunch of unlimited stuff, which is really cool. But the roots of the World Cup really live with RT. This was something he and I had talked about a couple of years ago, and he'd actually written down a bit of the initial sketch of the format, and we sort of dusted it off for this year. So welcome back, RT, and thanks for the sort of initial frame in there.
I assume he's in college now, right? Or in school now, I should say. So working hard. Although maybe on summer break, maybe you get a little more out of him. Who knows?
Soon on summer break, he played his first round match. Swapped in a teammate for a second round match because it was finals time, and I bet we'll see him back in round 3.
Makes sense. All right. Well, before we head out, I want to thank you not only for joining, but for continuing to do. You've taken on quite a load in the last year and change-ish on the ARH team. The products are shown, right, of that, and just the the reinvigoration, bringing your project management skills to the table. So thank you for what you're doing there, and letting the kids go out and design their cards while you hold down the fort. So much appreciated.
Yeah, well, hey, thank you too. I think getting the storytelling out about what the game looks like today and what this community feels like is kind of a team effort. So I'm glad to have a platform to do some of that, and really appreciative that I know every Friday there's another kind of Destiny story that folks can plug into too. So thanks for keeping this rolling.
You bet. That is the goal. Every Friday, 4 a.m. Pacific. That's the
Amen.
goal. All right. Well, we're going to cap it off. It's got a good 40 minutes of Destiny talk there. So thanks for that. And we'll let you get back to your family. And you got to say it with me, my friend.
Awesome.
Go Commando.
Go Commando.